Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Chris from the Amazon developer team. I'm really excited to talk with Jack. Jack, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm the blue collar coder on YouTube. I used to be a principal engineer over at Nike and Walmart, and as part of my job over there, I was doing React DevRel and working with teams on getting React into their applications back in the jQuery days. And so I started giving brown bags and doing some education,
Yeah.
and then I kind of got into YouTube. And so now I'm on YouTube doing full stack stuff, talking about Next.js,
Right.
and now recently getting into being a core contributor on the TanStack team, because I think the TanStack is a fantastic ecosystem for React. I really want to be part of it.
For sure. So yeah, we'll get to TanStack. That's how I got to know you. Was I was looking up some of the top dev educators
Oh,
when I was in DevRel at Stripe, and I was looking up obviously Wes Boss and all these things.
oh yeah.
Your blue collar coder channel just kept showing up everywhere I was. And so,
Awesome.
what's it been like? Like you oscillate between dev education, but you're also like, supporting, we'll talk about TANSA. Like, what's it kind of like? You wear different hats, like
Yeah.
how you learn by you build in public and you learn by teaching.
Yeah.
But then I also can tell you have a real product mind. And so how do you divvy up your brain space between these different?
In a way, it's kind of like I'm driven by my own personal happiness of like,
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I started getting into TanStack was at the end of last year. I was like, spending a whole bunch of time just on my own in front of a green screen, and that's cool. And I'm learning all this cool stuff. I was like, I want to be part of an open source project, and what open source project really has me excited. And so that was when I was like, oh yeah, TanStack. And so I talked with Tanner, and I'm like, okay, how can I help out? It just kind of blew up from there. But that's, yeah. So I honestly, like, one of the things that I think about when I'm creating content is, what excites me, and I get into it.
You
And
find it
then
interesting.
I find it interesting. I figure that the audience probably finds it interesting
That's the
too.
spark.
Yeah, and then I go and do some investigations on it. Might talk to the author, see,
Yeah.
do some coding, say, hey, is this the right way to do it? And then try and figure out some entry point, like a practical entry point for folks. Like, oh, you're an e-commerce app and you need to do this thing, bring up a dialogue or whatever. And this is a really cool tool for that, to make that really easy or quotable or accessible or whatever. And then build out some code, give that to people free. And
So you're really intentionally you're taking the effort to be intentional about your audience. Like
oh,
the
definitely,
talk
I always
with
have it
the
in
talk,
mind.
yeah, the talk you have is going to be tailored to the folks are in the room listening.
Yeah, and I think the two people I have in mind are like your kind of larger company developers who just want to kind of get stuff done.
Yep.
And then also solopreneurs, folks
That-
who are like, I'm in a garage and I want to go and make, some cool apps. And I want
Indie hacker.
indie hacker, right? And so, yeah, like that's the kind of thing. What are tools that are going to make that easy? What are some AI workflows that are going to make it so that,
Right.
you can pull this off, individually, and spend most of your time thinking about the cool intellectual property, what you're going to build, and the unique value of that versus like, how do I do off?
Maybe let's, like, for folks that aren't familiar with Tanner and aren't familiar with TanStack and also maybe the Start framework, why don't we kind of zoom in on what the heck is TanStack? Talk to me a little bit about like what you're focused on these days.
So you're probably using TanStack, whether you know it or not,
Okay.
because Tanner Lindsley, kind of a regular indie hacker type guy, had some issues with use effect and fetching back in the early days of React. And so to help fix that problem, which is a big deal for folks, he created this system called React Query.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've used React Query.
Yeah, exactly. Like 30% of all installed applications, React applications, use React Query, because we're mostly still doing SPAs or single page applications, and they need to fetch data. And if you're fetching data out of a use effect and writing that on your own, you're going to have problems. With React Query, that kind of stuff never happens. You get really good caching. And so he basically solved that problem. And then kind of you start getting more open source contributors sort of getting in there and saying, yeah, let's make more of an ecosystem of these kinds of helpful libraries. And that became the TanStack ecosystem of libraries. So you got like a virtualized table system that makes it easy to have infinitely sized tables. You've got a real-time database system, which is super cool, called TanStack DB. I could go talk about that for hours and hours and hours. That one's really neat. And then we created our own version of a like React router because, React, whatever, I think the React router has its issues. And
Sure.
so he created TanStack router, and then building on top of a router, if you want server-side rendering or server functions or API routes, which are really, important. Start is a framework that would compete with like a Next or a Remix.
Sure.
And they actually had a whole bunch of them listed up there, which TanStack Start was one. And yeah, so you're going to get server-side rendering, but it's built from a SPA perspective. It's like, what if you started with the mindset of a single page application and said, well, maybe I'll need an API route, actually. So what's an easy way to just kind of bring in an API route into an existing SPA application, as opposed to starting with heavy-handed server-side rendering and making it kind of inconvenient for SPA developers
Right.
to kind of bust back out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a fantastic framework because I think most people are in that space of where it's like you have a few pages that are server-side rendered. Maybe if you're in an e-commerce app, your home page is server-side rendered, product details, search, but your cart, checkout, all that sort of stuff, all the kind of complex experiences are more client-side rendered.
Right.
And so we actually have an interesting model of SSR that nobody else has, which is this ability to have the server just get the data and leave the rendering to the client.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Okay, so in our world, in the Amazon developer world, we are helping developers build. They might have an app already on iOS or Android or web, and we want to support them building for Fire TVs or for. We just launched like Vega OS, which is built in React Native, and so a common use case that we haven't talked much about is web views, like
Yeah.
how to build an app that it can work if it's a Samsung or if it's React Native for web. And so, talk to me a little bit about, can you use TanStack for, like, how would you approach like a web view experience? And is there anything you like? Obviously, performance is a big question, and so kind of curious about like the web view model for native apps.
Yeah. So I think you're going to use your router to manage your state as you go through the application. That's all strongly typed. Everything in TanStack is very heavily, not overly heavily, but strongly typed. So that, like, as an example, as you're building out all of your routes, we know all of the routes, we have all of the parameter information, all of that. So as you're like saying, okay, I want a link, it knows here are your possible routes. And then as you go, okay, I want that route. And so, oh, okay, well, that route needs, an order ID or it needs
Totally.
product ID. And it's all there for you. It's all type checked. So you never get 404s or any of that stuff. And then to communicate with your backend services, you're going to use TanStack Query or TanStack DB now, which can do these things like live collections. So if you have some sort of real-time component to your application where maybe you have a chat or something like that going on in your application.
User liking or reacting in real time.
Yeah, where you get the live count of things like that. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of libraries that are in this space that's really handy for that.
So if folks want to dive into TanStack, should they start in your doc? Should they start in GitHub? Like, what's the trailhead to kind of dive into TanStack, the suite of libraries, or just getting started in general at start?
Two cool things there. So TanStack.com is where I want to get started with just going into our docs.
Hello World's there.
Yeah, I think we do better than Hello World.
Okay.
So that's actually.
I've never heard anyone have thoughts about Hello World.
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts about Hello World.
Oh, I'm here for this.
Okay, so, I was thinking about getting into this TanStack thing, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you can work on the docs. I'm like, oh, okay, that's sure. Well, that's kind of fun, I guess.
That's right.
And then the React team decided, hey, we have a great idea. Let's go and deprecate create React app.
Oh yeah,
Right.
For those not watching, those not knowing this is the number one way to get up and running previously with React.
Yeah. Right. And as an educator, I use this in a lot of videos.
Totally.
Right. So it was kind of like, oh, well, what happened to all my old videos if they can't do that anymore? So I'm like, Tanner, actually, this is a kind of cool thing. We could actually go and create like a create TanStack app. So all you need to do is just change out one word, create a React app to TanStack app. And we would give you pretty much the exact same content, the exact same file layout, the whole thing, but it would be on top of a router, on top of our router.
Yep.
And it was great. Bang, just like took off. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. Okay, cool. And we got a bunch of sponsors. So I was like, well, what could we do if we actually had it so that, let's say that you want to bring in a Neon database, or you want to go and bring in query,
Yep.
which just make it really easy. So, now the CLI has this thing where you can select stuff. And then Sentry came in. They're like, hey, we have this really cool chat application. It uses, AI. What, could we bring that in as an example? And this just started like growing and growing and growing. And then, of course, like we released a solid version of TanStack Start. So now we got to have two different platforms. And then I was like, oh, cool. Well, this MCP thing is blowing up.
Totally.
So I have there's an option in there where you can launch it in an MCP mode.
That's cool.
And bring it into your IDE.
And then like
Maybe the UI mode.
yeah, it has all the context as training on your A4A references.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can basically say, I want a TanStack app that's got query and blah, 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 blah. And it just works. And then there's also UI where you can select, like just check a box, all that sort of stuff. And now we're actually going to move that over to TanStack.com.
Okay.
And have it have that also be over there, as well as potentially an AI builder. So it's just kind of like blowing up. And it's like, Hello World is kind of like hello explosion.
So I think Postman, I think the platform team at Postman made a job application that you had to connect to an MCP in order to apply.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, to
I ended up
recap,
getting a shirt, by the way.
well, that was so MCP.shop.
Right.
Yeah,
I was just like,
my
wife's like, hey, we got informed delivery and you're getting some package. I'm like, oh, okay.
I was at the
And then I was like, oh God, I forgot that I did this.
Yeah, so I was at MCP night, and WorkOS put that on
Oh,
at
nice.
Cisco, and they made MCP.shop, and they're like, anyone who connects to our MCP in any agent, any AI tool can get a hat, a shirt, and I did it, and yeah, I got an enterprise ready hat, I got an MCP shirt.
Yeah, man.
It's great. Yeah, I was like,
Okay, I only got the shirt. Oh well.
okay, so I want to go back to obviously in developer relations, I care a lot about getting devs up and running.
Yeah.
I know devs already have some institutional knowledge, like they're not coming from scratch. So what is better than a hello world?
Oh, I think okay. So if you think about it, like everybody's like, I don't like. I either want something that's incredibly simple, minimal, right?
Code snippets versus a full blown reference app.
Oh yeah, or something that's got everything that would do
More than you need to know.
more than you need to know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of like create like a different lane, which was, okay, cool. You want to have query and you want to have a bunch of other things all set up. So each add-on basically sets up stuff. That's critical, right? You got to get it all configured properly. And then you don't want to waste LLM tokens on setting that stuff up. Right. So that's number one. And two, when we put demo stuff in there, we put it only in one directory. There's only one link to it. And so at the point when you're done with it, you just delete the one directory of demo stuff, get rid of the one little reference, and now you got a bare as app. But in the meantime, your LLM can go and look through all that code and be like, oh, okay, that's how you make a server function. Oh, that's how you do.
It's learning
Yeah.
along with you.
It's exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's you're not, as a human, you're not the only client for that demo stuff.
That makes sense. So, okay, so with TanStack, you have a suite of libraries that can help devs get started quicker. I would imagine there is dev teams or individual devs, if we talk about the ask your developer approach, like classic Twilio, that might be using your tools or should be using your tools at their companies.
Mhm.
And I would also assume it seems like there's not some pro serve model, like you really are working on through open source donations, open source projects. So talk to me about like that path of a dev that falls into the world of TanStack, starts using it as a team, and what's kind of like a path you see, and what type of support would help the project you're working on.
Right. So coming out of like a Nike or Walmart, which is where I was previously, there's always that space of, hey, you take it to your team lead or you take it to your architect and you're like, hey, I did this really cool thing,
Yep.
and we're always game for that, to see what's some cool new library that you tried or whatever. And if it's good, then support it, right? Go and actually, you can get an imprint on TanStack.com, come in as a supporter. Lots of
Get up
companies.
sponsor, open collective, Thailand. What do you use?
There's GitHub sponsorships, but you can also come directly to us.
Cool.
And that's what Cloudflare has done.
Great.
And a bunch of other big companies. because they see the value in it, right?
Totally.
Just recently, Cloudflare and Netlify and one other basically joined forces to back uh, Astro, which
Yeah.
is fantastic.
Yeah, that's
I'm a
great.
huge Astro
Yeah,
fan,
yeah, yeah.
and TanStack because they kind of see that really those are the only two players left in the market that don't have some sort of VC connection or company
Corporate
connection or
overlord, yep.
corporate overlord, and they want something where it is genuinely open source.
I love it.
But that sponsorship thing that's important for folks to actually like work with their companies and get those things sponsored.
How big is is there a TanStack team? Is it
Yeah, every big library has one champion. Yeah, and I'm the champion on mine.
cool?
And that they're cook, chef, chief bottle washer, product manager,
Yeah.
doing the PRs and all that sort of stuff. So there's probably like I'd say a core group of about 20 people or so that are going across the whole ecosystem. It's a very vibrant system. Folks are really into this. I actually, even on my, hello world type creator thing, I'll get, PR submissions from folks. Oh, you missed this or whatever.
Sure.
I lint, here's a new linting option for you, all that kind of stuff. It's great.
Okay, so I've noticed that non-developers, like some of my colleagues that are in sales or in marketing, I can very quickly get them comfortable with agentic coding, like Claude Code
Sure.
or Amazon Q or Code OpenAI Codex. And I've noticed some senior developers, there's this hang up of like they're kinda not even letting themselves go there because they're like, "I can do it better," or like, the thought of, like, there's a hang up of, "Will this replace me?" And so, for senior dev that is trying to get more comfortable with, like, when and why would I use a tool like agentic coding or MCPs, how do you help a dev understand what it's good for, what they should ideate and try out versus, like, not using any of these tools and saying, like,
I just can't even imagine doing that. Yet last night I was like, oh, I'm gonna want to bring in like into my Hello World thing. I want to bring in a preview, right? So I want in the like the browser when we're showing all the options and everything, like you can literally see what the site's gonna look like.
Yeah.
It's running in the browser,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, oh well, I've already implemented this over here, and so I just kind of talked to the AI and I said, hey, go grab it over there, bring it over here. Da, da, da. And we had this conversation, took a couple of hours because there was all these technical rigmarole. And I ended up having to do a little bit of coding. And I was like, wow, actually, that's the first time in a while I've actually like, just straight up coded this sort of stuff. Because I mean, I kind of think of it like, I mean, a lot of folks think of it like a junior engineer, like a kind of person
Yeah.
a trusted
Yep.
companion that you can kind of say, hey,
Delegate.
delegate
Yeah,
this
yeah.
out to. And that's a good way to try it out, I think. Think about like something small, like some UI enhancement, or, make this, get add a theme selector and some theming or whatever like that, and just see, does it do a decent job, and then try and get it to do a decent job in your environment. I mean, there's ways that you can do that, like you can add an agents.md file that
Yep. Yep.
explains the structure of your application and where you put things, and try and get good with it, because I'm gonna tell you, like I was talking recently to a hiring manager at Nike, old friends,
Yep.
and they're like, "Yeah, we don't hire folks that don't have AI skills nowadays."
Interesting. It's almost a signal if they're resistant to even try it out.
Yeah,
Okay, so then
it's a job skill nowadays.
fascinating. So on a practical level, what tools did have you tried out, whether or not you're using them actively? Like, yeah, maybe what are your like ones have you explored, and then maybe what are some of your go-to agentic coding tools? And then lastly, I'm really curious of I always love hearing like any must-have like MCPs that like you always have running.
Well, our MCP, the Create TS Router app MCP, that's great. Um, Agentic coding tools, I'm a cursor guy,
Yeah.
and I've been pretty happy with that. Although I was talking to some folks last night about, some background stuff. I need to get kind of deeper into that.
Okay.
Kiro, actually, there you go. I recently played around with Kiro. I thought that there are two really interesting takes there. Obviously, the spectrum in development is pretty interesting. As long as you kind of guide it towards your development model, like you're an AI, a UI first developer where you want to see it and then drive to make sure that you tell it that that's the way you want to go. Because generally speaking, it's going to try and go API and test heavy from the back end. And then also the agentic hooks. And it's funny, I was talking with some folks in the React team today. I'm like, and they're they were like, oh, I got to keep the documentation up to date. I'm like, that's exactly what agentic hooks are about. So it's like, hey, I made this change, this PR, and there's an agent hook that says, well, make sure the documentation's up to date when I make this change. It's
So
so
anytime
cool.
React pushes new docs, you basically have an action. You basically have a hook that's telling you, hey, refresh the context.
Right. Or in their case, like they're going to go and make a change to, the way that this particular hook works or whatever. I'm not, that's will be a massive change, but you know, it's going to go and look at the PR, analyze what the changes that have been made, and then add new release notes or add up it just automatically.
Things that just got to get done.
That is done, which you totally just forget.
Okay.
Right. Fantastic. I love that. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of split on the CLI tool thing.
Interesting.
It's kind of neat.
So you really want you are comfortable with a GUI.
Yeah. I mean, but that's, I think, just a question of like timing. Like I was really heavy into VS Code and Copilot,
Of
and
course.
then Cursor kind of became the upstart, and then Windsurf, and then kind of bouncing back and forth between those things, and then just seeing which one is better. And then Claude CLI comes out, and it's like, well, this is cool, but I'm not sure like why that versus. And then they've got a VS Code extension, so everything's kind of everywhere now.
It's funny. I'm using.
Then there was Warp, which is just like the whole.
I haven't tried Warp. I don't even know.
Oh, okay, yeah. Warp is like a terminal. They kind of ran it from the other direction, which is like they're adding in IDE features into a terminal,
Yeah.
and then they're adding agentic stuff. So as you're just like typing in your terminal, you could do LS, and then you could also say like, "Hey, write me a tic-tac-toe game," and we go, "Oh, well, that's more of a agent thing. I'll just go and do that for you." And you're like, "Whoa, okay, that's
Right.
cool."
Okay, so if folks want to get started with TanStack, just tanstack.com.
Yep.
If folks want to like watch some of your dev education content, how do they find you on YouTube?
Sure, Jack Herrington. It's
Okay.
like a ton of fish. Herring, right?
Like herringbone.
Herringbone, exactly. Jack Herrington on YouTube, and yeah, I've got all kinds of stuff on there. I've got stuff around micro front ends, TypeScript education, React core education, Next.js, TanStack.
Do you have a way for folks to like sponsor some of your dev education stuff? Or you just do it and then you get the views?
Well, I mean, I do work with companies when
Cool.
yeah, everyone
Like on a launch or dev education stuff.
Oh no, these would be like companies that are like looking to promote their products, and
Sure.
I think they're
Then you walk through the product or
yeah,
oh, that's interesting. Almost like yeah, sponsored. You
yeah,
walk through dog food. Yeah. All right. So TanStack for that project. Jack Herrington, blue collar coder on YouTube,
yeah.
and then for I didn't remember where you said you do blog ever or do any type of.
I used to do a lot of
You're on dev.to.
yeah, I haven't written there in a while.
I
I need to, it's like one of those things. But yeah, no, got a bunch of articles over there. I'm on X.
Yep.
But
For
yeah,
sure.
primarily and nowadays because of the kind of my schedule's full. It's like all the TanStack stuff and the content production and learning how to play guitar. It's kind of it's a
I was just saying, the cobbler's kids go without shoes. It's
my wife would love that because yeah, she's
yeah,
the moment that I left, of course, the internet goes down. She's got rebooted. She's like, where does the thing with the all that. Yeah.
completely.
Oh my God.
Well, Jack, really thank you for your time. I
Yeah.
really appreciate how you teach topics, but I could tell you're also learning it. And I really look forward to seeing what you all build at TanStack.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right, take care, y'all.